Artificial intelligence technology that can clone people's voices is a potential threat to companies who rely on voice systems that authenticate customers' identities. Will businesses that use voice biometrics need to scrap these systems because of this new AI? We're going to discuss these topics on this episode of Today in Tech. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Today in Tech. I'm Keith Shaw. Joining me on the show today is Dimitris Vassos. He is the CEO and founder of Omilia. Welcome to the show, Dimitris.
Hi, nice to be here.
All the way from Greece today. So thank you for taking the time to speak with us. I want to jump right into this idea of voice cloning technology. We've seen a lot of examples of it, but I want to dig a little bit into how did this work? Did this develop from the idea of voice biometrics? Because voice biometrics has been around probably for about 20 years. Is that where we then saw that technology move into this voice cloning area?
Yeah, and to be more accurate, voice cloning is not a new technology. It's just that recently has become very, very good.
Okay.
Right. So it wouldn't be able to fool you before, but now it can. So that's where the problem begins, right? And you're absolutely right. It shares the same technology with voice biometrics. You can think of them as one being the reverse sort of process of the other, because with voice biometrics, what we try to do is listen to an audio and extract the features that are unique to that person, right? So what describes the voice. So we go from audio down to a bunch of numbers, really. And so you can think of that as encoder. And voice cloning does the exact opposite. It says, hold on, we've got this bunch of numbers that describe Keith's voice. How can we reproduce Keith's voice if we know this information, right?
Right.
So it's, turning the technology on its head, really. And it's, as I said, it's been around for quite some years, but the results were not good. I mean, the resulting voice was very robotic and didn't really sound like you. It's only the last couple of years that technology got to the point where with deep neural networks and with large language models, people were able to actually very, very accurately reproduce the voice.
Right. So that was the breakthrough was through the large language models and the deep neural networks that caused the bad technology to get good all of a sudden.
Yeah, mainly deep neural networks, but also large language models do help with figuring out the nuances and the prosody and making sure that the rendering of the audio of the speech sounds more natural in terms of the intonation and pauses and things like that.
Right. And so what amazed me over the past year when I was trying out some of this stuff or getting demonstrations of it was that you only needed like 1 minute or a couple of minutes of my voice. And you could get that from anywhere if you watch, you can grab it from any of these episodes or things like that. But you needed a small sample size, and then you could clone me to say anything I want. That's the idea of voice cloning, right? Is that you could now have me saying, reciting a speech that I've never recited, or even more nefarious, things that are out there, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's reached the point today where they can do that. The technology can do that in real time. So I can actually be speaking something, and the content of what I say is rendered in real time in your voice or any voice that I choose. So that's become dangerous on a whole new level, because it allows dynamically to create attack vectors, right, which are not constrained to some predefined type of answers. So potentially this could be a very powerful tool for somebody who wants to commit fraud in a call center, in a banking environment, or anything.
Now, can you explain a little bit about what voice biometrics systems technically do? Just run me through. Is it just to authenticate, my identity through my voice, where I go, "I'm Keith Shaw, please let me in," to whatever, or is there more to it than and then you match it with my original voice print, right?
So voice biometrics in itself, it's just a technology. It's like saying, I've got an electric motor, right? What do I do with the electric motor? Oh, I can build an electrical, vehicle, right? And then you have a transportation solution, right? In the same way, voice biometrics is just a core technology, and we can take it and create solutions for identifying and validating the identity of people. So that's one use, but we can also use the same technology for doing a blacklist, for example, match, and say, okay, well, the voice I'm just hearing, I can match it to a known list of fraudsters.
Okay.
Right? So that's an anti-fraud solution. And there's, multiple different ways you can apply this technology to solve business problems in the contact center or beyond.
Are you hearing concerns from customers that have maybe deployed some of these voice biometric systems? Or, how concerned are they about a lot of this new AI voice cloning? Is there a sense of panic out there, or like, oh, we're going to get attacked, or this system isn't as safe as it was before? Or are they still confident in the ability of their system to detect fraudulent activity?
I don't think that a lot of the older voice biometrics implementations are capable of recognizing this type of attacks. I think that only the latest and greatest in voice biometric solutions have the ability to recognize these kinds of sophisticated attacks. Customers I don't think customers should panic, because unless you are a bank and you hold the accounts of famous people whose voice somebody can find very easily on social media and clone their voice, and then social engineer the rest of their whatever information and use that to attack. Otherwise, it's more difficult to clone a random person's voice, but still the capability is there. I don't think companies should panic, but they should start to understand the risks and how they can, protect against those kinds of attacks.
Are a lot of these systems out there? I don't run into voice biometrics a lot in my day-to-day life. I've seen facial recognition systems. It's on my phone. I've seen fingerprint readers for different types of things, again on my phone or tablet. Where are you seeing a lot of the use cases of voice biometrics?
Well, we see it a lot in contact centers. It's one of the very important technologies because it gets you through the hurdle of authentication, right? And authentication is, I say it's a hurdle. It's the major pain point of customer service is, how do I know who I'm talking to so that then I can enable services for that person, right? I cannot give you your account balance unless I'm pretty sure that you are the legitimate owner of that account.
Right.
And that's where a lot of customer service automations fall short, because I cannot provide the automation because I don't have a reliable means of authenticating you, right? So that drops the automated fulfillment rate down to, small numbers like 10, 20, 30%. It's only when you start to have a reliable means of authenticating and validating the identity of your callers that you can crawl up to very meaningful 50, 60, 70, or 80% automation, which is what the largest, financial institutions, for example, in North America, enjoy today.
Do you find these mostly at maybe higher profile or like banking institutions, maybe where there's people that have a lot of money? Because it feels like whenever I talk to customer service, the thing they ask me is, well, what's the last 4 digits of your social security number? And that's about all they need, or an address or a phone number or something like that. And obviously voice biometrics would be a little bit more secure, correct?
It is more secure, but I would say don't be fooled by what you see and hear in the interaction, because there's a lot more happening that behind the scenes that is just passive. You don't realize it. For example, when a bank asks you for just the last four of your social security number, that's because they already recognized your caller ID. They have your caller ID on file. They know that you call from that caller ID. And also they have means of validating that this caller ID is genuine and you haven't used some sort of spoofing technology, right? So, and that's why they say, okay, well, I trust the caller ID. This is the number that Keith is calling me from. I know it. Let me just verify with the last four SSN, just, as an extra measure. And then off we go.
Well, could they be authenticating my voice without even me realizing that they've done it? Like maybe the first couple of, do they have to ask you to opt into a voice biometric system? Or could they just say, well, the last time he called, we captured his voice? Because there is that message of be like, please be aware your voice might be recorded. Could they just take that recording and validate me that way? And then every next time I call, they could use a voice detection system to basically validate whenever I answer the question.
Yeah, absolutely. They don't, they will not ask you to say something specific to validate your voice.
Okay.
Just during the normal course of conversation, they will do that validation in the background. But enterprises are obliged by law upfront to tell you that they're doing this.
Okay.
And usually not just say, we are recording your voice and you consent. They will also give you the reason why or how they're going to use the recording. That's mandatory by law to tell you, we're recording your voice for quality monitoring reasons, or we're recording your voice for authentication reasons, right? And then you've given consent that your voice can be used for authentication.
Okay, so the phrasing that I often hear is, could we use your voice? Like, please be aware that we could be using your voice for training purposes. And I always just assume that that's customer training or customer service agent training. But could that also be then used for like training an AI to learn what my voice sounds like? I just thought of that just off the top of my head.
I mean, they can train the agent, or now we have AI agents, so they can train the AI agent on good strategies how to process calls. But if they're going to be authenticating your identity by your voice, they will need to tell you explicitly in the consent disclaimer doing so. And
again, we've established that a lot of these new AI voice clones are pretty accurate in getting past some of these systems, right? Like if they're an older voice biometric system, you would have some concerns about cloning getting through these systems, correct?
Yeah, that is correct.
Okay.
Only the systems can have extra layers of protection to understand that these types of attacks are happening.
Were these systems pretty good before all of this AI stuff came around at detecting voices? Like if I tried to just record my voice, or if someone recorded my voice and then tried to splice it together or digitize it or anything like that. And I'm just thinking usually of some of these Hollywood movies where the good guy hackers are trying to get into the bad guy's hideout and they do this whole splicing thing. Is that just kind of like the Hollywood version of it? And in reality, you would never be able to do that?
No, you could do that. I mean, you can use replay attacks. How successful they're going to be depends on how well you do it and how sophisticated the voice biometric solution is on the other end. These days, I think replay attacks and countermeasures for replay attacks have been in the market for quite some years. So I don't think that you'd be able to use that successfully today. But deepfakes, that's a whole new level of sophistication there.
Right.
Not to say that, they are more difficult to create anti-measures, but you have to create different kind of anti-measures for them.
Yeah, it does feel like now that we might be in an arms race between the good guys and the bad guys, correct?
Yeah, you could definitely say that. I mean, there's every week, literally, there's something new coming up, and you have to adapt and have the counter measures in place before the vulnerability hits the market.
Right. What are some of the methods that are being used without, obviously I'm not asking you to get deep down into the technology, but there are methods for detecting a lot of these new AI voice cloning systems, right?
There are different methods, and there is also legislation happening as we speak that's gonna make it easier to detect them. So the EU Act for AI, I think it does have a provision for watermarking. So it's gonna make it mandatory for companies that release this technology as a product to watermark the products of their technology. So whenever you record something, you create a speech segment, it's watermarked. Mm-hmm. And then technologies that are on the receiving end of that audio can then detect the watermarking. And that's an easy way to detect legitimate, let's say, above the table sort of technologies. But this technology is soon going to be open source, right? It's already there's open source. So potentially anybody could take that open source and start being a bad actor.
Right.
How to protect against that?
We do? Yeah, go ahead. Well, are you seeing, it feels like a bad guy is not going to kind of follow the regulation and put a watermark in their voice. If they're taking it and building it themselves, they're not going to add a watermark. But do these systems potentially they leave breadcrumbs around for another system to detect?
Yeah, exactly. Breadcrumbs is a very good expression, I think, to describe what it does. So every system has its own little flaws or lack of flaws. They're both very important clues. And it's like forensics, right? We see that on TV. Whenever a gun is fired, they collect the bullet.
Yeah.
And by examining how the bullet has, markings on it, they can figure out which gun it got fired from, right? And this is what we're doing exactly. We are firing these guns. So we are taking all these open source frameworks. We are creating a bunch of deep fakes. And then we train a model to recognize those imperfections or markings or breadcrumbs that each of those frameworks leaves behind.
Right. And I guess the ultimate answer for a lot of these things would be don't just rely on a single source of technology to do this authentication. It's almost like, all right, well, if they can get into one area, you still got other hurdles to jump, and that's where you then start into social engineering and training and things like that, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's been a fallacy in the market for way too long that your voice print, which is your voice biometric print of your voice, is like a fingerprint. It's unique. Mm-hmm. It's not. It's just a very, very, very good approximation describing the characteristics of your voice. And we've seen in the press cases where identical twins have managed to get into each other's bank accounts.
Okay.
Which proves that, if the voice is very, very, very close to yours, the biometric system is going to be fooled.
Right. So
and that's.
Can you talk a little bit about how bad actors are infiltrating some call centers, even if they don't have the voice cloning technologies? What other things are they doing? And I guess we saw a big example of this in the MGM Resorts hack, where they were able to social engineer some data about the employee and basically fool the help desk or whoever was working on that access.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, some of the financial institution customers we're working with, a lot of them have told us that they know that 70% of all fraud that they get starts from the call center.
Okay.
Which means that the bad actors, they will start from the call center, they call in, they talk to an agent, they try to create an emotional situation with the agent where the agent feels obliged or feels, let's say, wants to help the caller. Mm-hmm. So they do release some private information. And it can be a breadcrumb, but what they do is then they call back, they speak to another agent, they use that breadcrumb to gain some trust, and the other agent gives them another breadcrumb. So they start to, put together the pieces of a puzzle, and then they have enough to eventually get to an agent where they will say, oh, this guy must definitely be Dimitris because he knows 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 things.
Yeah. So it's really that social engineering and the empathy of a call center agent to, and I didn't realize that multiple calls are something that could happen. So if it was you and me on a call, like you're the call center agent, I would just do something like, I remember I can't remember my password or my passphrase, but it ended in an N. Is that right? And then, sound distraught. And then you as the call center agent would go, you're close, but maybe it ends in an M. And, and then I hang up, and then I eventually get this passphrase based on what, letters I'm giving, right? It's almost like a big game of Wordle.
Yeah, it's called, breaking the code by brute force. I mean, if the company has like 2,000 agents calling back and back and back, you're not gonna hit the same agents, so they're gonna help you a little bit. You can use the example you gave is very good, right? There's 27 letters in the alphabet, so that's how many calls you need, right? 26, okay.
26. All right. So we had talked earlier about, that the call centers that are using a lot of these voice biometric systems, it still feels like it's the early stages. What are some of the reasons why companies might not be deploying it? Are these too difficult to install? Is it a lot of training that it involves? Is it complexity? Is it cost? Like why are we not? Or is it that maybe they've been installed, we're just not aware of it?
Some of them you're not aware, but if I take the whole pie of contact centers in the market, I would say about 75% are still on-premise deployments, and 25 are in the cloud. The on-premise solutions, it's a lot more costly to deploy these solutions because they're going to be customly integrated into the environment. And that costs a lot. It's slow. It takes time, and it's going to be more expensive, right? Therefore, you see a lot of these systems now being deployed in companies that have already decided to migrate their contact center to the cloud. Mm-hmm. And when you go to the cloud and you choose your, cloud contact center platform of choice, most of them are already integrated with solutions for voice biometrics. So now you can get it out of the box. You just click a switch and you have voice biometrics. So it's becoming a lot more frequent to see enterprises that as they do their migration to the cloud, they're also enabling these advanced technologies for voice biometrics, for AI automation, which are now a lot more accessible just because they're all part of the cloud ecosystem already.
Yeah. And so getting back to the question of how fast this has come about, when you were watching the development of these technologies, especially in this AI voice cloning space, did it hit you guys by surprise? Obviously, from an outside observer standpoint, I was like, wow, that came about really quickly. Or have you guys been monitoring this? And then it just it was, a straight line versus this is now an exponential curve of I guess, accuracy is my, like what did you see, behind the scenes? Go ahead. I'm sorry.
You're referring to text or voice biometrics altogether?
Say that again. Go ahead. Say that again. I'm sorry.
Are you referring to deep fakes?
Yeah, I'm talking about the voice cloning technologies, about how good it became versus, it's been around for a while, but it was never that good. It sounded like robots, or you needed a sample size of, 10 minutes of voice transcription type thing.
Yeah, these evolutions, if I may use that word, in technology do happen stepwise. I mean, something happens like some open source gets released, some big company gets a breakthrough, they publish a paper, with some new algorithms and things change, right? And then people take those published papers and they try to create something practical that works, and usually they are successful. I mean, technology and neural networks is so accessible these days. It's so easy to put together a solution like deepfakes that pretty much anybody can do it.
Yeah. What do you think about the next year? Like, what does the future hold? Is it a lot of these companies are going to play catch up in trying to detect this stuff, or is there enough confidence out there that you'll be able to stop whatever comes out from the bad guys?
Well, if humanity still exists and AI hasn't taken over our lives, I think no, seriously now, I think I'm confident that Voice Biometrics is going to be able to stop the abuse, stop the fraud, simply because we're always one step ahead of whatever technology comes out. We are the company that actually produces that technology, the foundational technology to begin with, right? Being one step ahead, I think, is important. And it's also important for customers to trust companies that do create foundational technology and are in cloud, because in the cloud, you always get the latest and greatest. The software is always updated to the latest and greatest, right? Whereas when you have an on-premise solution, which is customized, you tend to fall behind in terms of updates, right? And you do really want that real-time update to combat these attacks as they become more and more sophisticated all the time.
So you would predict that more and more companies are probably going to go to the cloud for these types of solutions?
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's a one-way street also. So I'm predicting that companies do not have a choice whether they want to use voice biometrics or not, because fraudsters are definitely going to be using voice cloning technology to make attacks. Therefore, enterprises necessarily need to arm up.
And then what kind of advice would you give to any call service? Well, any companies that have a call center, what kind of advice would you give them to train their agents to not fall for some of these attack methods? Is it just a matter of constant reminder and constant training and be aware of the attacks?
Yeah, I think it's really important to do something very simple, which is to expose agents to voice cloning technology so that they understand how it sounds, what the limitations are, how to recognize it. And there are limitations. I mean, it's not magic, right?
Yeah.
So by doing the right things, they can expose the deepfakes for sure. So keeping them up with the latest and greatest is very important.
All right, Dimitris Vassos, thank you so much for being on the show today. It was a great conversation about this technology.
Well, thank you very much. It was great being there.
All right, that's all the time we have for the show today. Be sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, add any comments that you have below. Join us every week for new episodes of Today in Tech. I'm Keith Shaw. Thanks for watching.